Hi, welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Normand, your host. Well, we're going to move to the north side of Lake St. Clair this week. We're going to talk to some guys from the North Star Yacht Club who kind of got an idea to build the Catalina 22 fleet. This weekend, they hosted the regional Catalina 22 championships, attracting Keith Bennett, who was the reigning two-time national champion in Catalina 22. And we had a chance to talk to Jim Hobson and Michael Wells, along with Michael Brackett. I want to make sure I get those names right. And we had a chance to talk to them about building the fleet, hosting next year's national championships, and what a race like this means at a national level for Catalina 22. And we also talked about the Catalina 22 being not necessarily the boat you might think about racing in comparison to some of the boats in the same class. And I think you'll find that to be a pretty interesting discussion. We then head back to the southern part of the lake. We had a chance to chat briefly with Tim Profit. And Tim talked a little bit about the Trans-Superior, about the successful summer he's had, his Fast Tango family. And I just kind of wanted to make sure Tim understood, and he does, but I want to make sure that there was a lot of people rooting for him this summer. He's a good guy, and I think you'll find this to be a really insightful interview. And then Dwayne Bergone and I and other voices are going to tackle a subject that's been probably beaten to death, but we're going to try it anyway. And that is PHRF versus ORC. And I think you'll find it to be an interesting discussion. And I think you'll find definitions to be pretty interesting. I'm not sure anybody's ever read the real definition of either of those, scientific formula for an ORC or the casual formula for casual yacht racing, which is, in fact, PHRF since the 1940s. So that'll be fun. Up next is the folks from North Star. So we'll be back in a second. Michael Brackett, who is why don't you give us your title so I could make it easy for both of us.
I'm the Catalina 22 National Association Fleet Captain for Southeast Michigan. Primarily the Detroit area, but I've got people on my mailing list pretty much all over the state.
Okay, and this is a regional championship that was held today.
The regatta here this weekend was the National Region 4 Championships for 2023. Region 4 consists of Michigan, Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, and the southern half of Wisconsin. And we had boats come in here from Chicago, Lexington, Kentucky, Allen Creek, Columbus, Ohio. We had a boat come up here from Lake Martin in Alabama. And I can't remember who the other guy was. We had 5 boats come in from out of town of the 11 boats total we had.
So the guy from Alabama, that's not in this region?
That's correct. He came up here primarily because he wanted to check out the venue, check out our lake, check out the club and stuff here, because next year, the second week in June, North Star Sail Club is hosting the Catalina 22 National Championship Regatta right here. And the guy from Alabama won the national championships this year in Arkansas, so he wanted to come up here and kind of get a little head start on what kind of sailing we have here on the Great Lakes and what to expect when he comes back next year.
Well, it's interesting. We've had a number of national championships, including laser championships at Crescent this year. So obviously the world's getting to know Lake St. Clair on a pretty large, wide basis.
It is. Our Catalina fleet is growing quite a bit in the last 3 years. Through the help of North Star Sail Club here, things have picked up quite a bit. We had 10 boats registered here, 11 boats, excuse me. We had 11 boats registered here today for the weekend. And I think last year for our the same regatta we did last year, we only had 5 or 6 boats registered. So we basically doubled our numbers this year. And this is the first time the Nationals have come up to Lake St. Clair for Catalina 22s. Last time the Nationals were in the Great Lakes region, they were in Toledo, Ohio, at North Cape Yacht Club down there in 2007. In 2007, we had the Nationals down there.
The obvious question I want to ask is with J70s and Melgus 24s, J22s kind of get lost in that sort of size fleet. So what is it you love about the Catalina 22?
Well, the Catalina 22 is, there's a lot of them. Next to lasers and sunfish, there's probably more Catalina 22s made. There are over 16,000 of them made. First ones came out in 1969, and they're still making them today. So that's something that not every sailboat manufacturer can say. It is relatively cheap to buy, relatively inexpensive if you've got very much, handy skills at all. You can maintain the boat pretty easily. I tell people all the time, if you have $3,500, you can get as many boats as you want. Most of the time, if you scrounge around, you can find a boat for $1,500. I know where there's one down at St. Clair Shores right now. The guy wants, if he sells it before he has to put it in winter storage, he'll sell it for $2,000.
So easy entry into the fleet.
Very easy entry in. There's fleets all over the country, so it doesn't make any difference where you go. We do a cruise. I sponsor or host a cruise every summer on the Great Lakes. We've sailed all 5 Great Lakes for a week on our Catalina 22s, camping some nights, staying in marinas some nights. We've sailed everything from the Apostle Islands to Put in Bay to Lake Ontario.
So it's your boat?
What's my boat? You mean?
No, it's your boat, meaning that's... You fall in love with it, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I bought my boat. My boat's a 1979 model. I bought it in 1989, and I'm still sailing it. Still having fun with it. I don't know how many more years I can do it, but having a lot of fun.
Appreciate your time. We had a chance to talk with a couple of other guys who are involved in the race here, and you guys are obviously kind of instrumental in starting this whole thing a couple years ago.
Right.
And building the fleet, that's part of this discussion. And in building that fleet, as we talked to Michael Beckett, who's part of that same organizational group, you had a chance to talk about having next year's Nationals. That's a huge deal.
Yeah.
So talk about this race and then kind of how it morphed and where it started.
Well, this race was actually our regional with the National Catalina Association. So we drew boats from Michigan, Indiana,
Alabama, Kentucky, Ohio, and Illinois.
I'm assuming the gentleman from Alabama, who I think was his first place after Saturday.
Yes.
Correct.
I'm assuming he's coming up to take a look at sort of the test of waters and being back up here for next year's Nationals.
Yeah.
I would think so because he's won the last 2 Nationals. So yes, I would think he's up here to look and check out the water.
So let's go back a couple of years. You're thinking, how do we build a Catalina 22 fleet? When we talked to Mr. Beckett, we talked about J70s and Melgus 24s and all the other kinds of boats in that same category. What goes through your mind when you want to build a Catalina 22?
Well, we're looking for a boat that there's boats around in the used market. And it's not a dead fleet. You can still buy a brand new Catalina 22, which is good. Keeps the fleet alive. And but there's a lot of boats around. You can pick one up for $700 what we.
That's what we did. Jim and I bought one about in 2019, I think it was. We bought it from some guy up north for $600-700. Now we've worked on it and got it race ready.
It's worth more than $700 today.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So, but we're looking for a boat you can get inexpensively. Somebody can pick it up, or if they want a second boat, they don't want to beat up their nice, beautiful cruising boat. One that doesn't take a lot of crew, because we don't want a boat that takes 7-8 crew members every race you go out on.
That's like these J35s. You have to have a hell of a crew list in order to keep 7 to 8 guys on there.
Right.
With us, Jim and I sailed the Nationals this year by ourselves. Okay. And although we do like to have 3 people on there, it's a lot easier setting the pole, the whisker pole. But you can sail that boat with 2 people competitively.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm a former 30 Catalina owner. I know how good Catalinas are.
Right.
But the 22 is kind of an obscure boat, not in volume, but certainly in the race world.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
It's a little bit like pulling up to Indianapolis and maybe having a Fairlane or something.
Right.
Exactly. There's a lot more boats like you got like a J22, the Melges, they're designed to be race boats. The Catalina 22 is never conceived to be in a race boat
So what's cool about the racing part of it? What is it that makes the boat competitive?
because when
Well,
you get
the
old,
sailors are. I mean, first of all, they
Okay.
tweak the hell out of the boat.
Okay.
Because it's not truly a one design boat.
Okay.
There are different weights on the keels, for example. Everybody likes the earlier boats produced in like late 60, 69, 70, 72, along in that range, because they're lighter. Okay. So people like the earlier boats because they're lighter, and you know, some of them that the keels can vary as much as 100, 150 pounds. You know.
that was basically because it was never conceived to the strict standards of a race boat like a J22 or a Melges 24.
Is
This is the only fleet that I know that people brag about two things. Number one, how little they spent on their boat, and how old their boat is. You know, you'll see well, the one Keith Bennett, the national champion last 2 years, he has hole number 33.
Yeah, something like that.
You know, I mean, a two-digit number. They're producing 10, 15,000 of these boats right now.
So it's fair when we get to November, you're not running down to Quantum looking for new sales for next year. I haven't changed them every year.
Well, there's some people. Yeah, we just got a new set. It does. It
Yes,
does help.
it's that competitive. It's that competitive where, you know, everybody's looking at sales, and like Jim said, we just bought a new set from Water Sales. That's one of the companies that sort of specializes in the 22 class. Okay, and most of the top competitors have Water Sales. But so there is a small cadre, a group of you know, sailors who are really trying to turn this into a competitive class.
And I did some research with US Boat today, and it turns out that there's about 18,000 Catalina 22s still operating around it. But like a lot of fleets, very regionalized.
Right.
Certainly very regionalized. Now you're trying to bring back the fleet here. What does a national championship mean to a national fleet?
Was it? Well, our national fleet we had this last year was in Arkansas, and we had 27, 28 boats there.
Right. Now there's two classes. There's the gold fleet and the silver fleet. All right. The silver fleet I think had 5, and we had 22 in the gold fleet. Okay. So again, it's set up for introductory racing with the silver fleet. Okay. But there's highly competitive racing at the gold level. Not much different. I know you've interviewed Ron Sherry. Okay. I've seen that interview. So it's not much different than what they do in the ice boating. You have the gold and the silver fleet there.
Okay.
You know, and we're trying to, one of the things we're trying to do is build up the silver fleet because we want to get people into the sport, okay? This is an inexpensive way for anyone to get into sailing. And basically, you talk to the sailors who are on the bigger boats, a lot of them probably started off on a 22. You know, it's a great boat to learn on.
Sure.
Everything on that boat is transferable to a 30 or 35, 40-foot boat.
Last question. We've had some obviously national championships, legit national championships. The Laser Championship was at Crescent here about 3 weeks ago. Today, as we speak, the Detroit Cup is going on with the match racing at Bayview. We've had a number of other national championships and sectional championships.
Sure.
The Sharks from Canada were in Tecumseh. They just ran that North American championships. We're getting a bit of reputation in this lake. Obviously, bringing J20 or in this case a Catalina 22 championship. So, does the exposure help? And I know that sounds like yes, it does. Of course, it does. But how does it help?
Well, and you know, when somebody's looking to join a club, hey, I'm a sailor, I like racing. You look to see who's doing what. You know, Crescent does a lot. Bayview obviously does a lot. North Star, in the past we've had Melges 24 nationals. We have had various J24s before, regionals and nationals.
J35 nationals.
J35 nationals 2 or 3 times. Catalina 30 nationals. We're going to have the Catalina 22 nationals next year. So, you know, it does attract. What advantages? It attracts sailors to your club, and it's a good thing.
And let me just ask one thing, Greg. It's not so much just the sailing, but it's the building up of this fleet and what they're seeing. Last night, there was a fellow in here from Port Huron Yacht Club who was with his grandson, okay? and he has a 22. It was out back in his barn or something, okay? But when he heard that we were building a 22 fleet here, he comes down yesterday because it was the kickoff of the regatta. He's looking at other boats, and what he wants to do is he wants to teach his grandson, okay, how to race and how to sail.
Sure.
So he's coming into this because we've got the fleet here. There was another guy, Tim Jordan, has a couple of 22s. When he found out that we were building the fleet here, he came down and looked it over. He's going to join us in the fall with one of his boats. So it's a momentum thing. You know, we're rolling downhill now, and the snowball is about to make the base the snowman. Okay, so we'd like to.
It also becomes important when we're losing junior sailing programs, as you did here. Obviously, Detroit Yacht Club. Numbers are kids aren't coming back to the sport, especially after the pandemic. That's just, we know that to be true. North Star, Crescent, every other sail club in the area can't survive if there's not a feeder program somewhere.
Correct.
Right.
If there's not blood coming in, because we're not living forever, obviously.
Right.
So that also becomes part of that same entry level from a smaller boat, not having to worry about. I just looked at IC-37s, and we're about to think about buying one, and it's like $318,000 for a boat. It's nuts.
Right.
Yeah, it is.
Like, professionally, I'm retired now, but professionally I was a librarian. Okay.
Oh, okay.
And it's the same thing there. In order to have adult readers, you have to have children who read. So that's why children's programming and children's librarianship was important, because we have to bring those individuals in to create the next generation of adult readers. It's no different here. We're trying to build this sport, and we're trying to, allow people in inexpensively. We're going to take money off the table. That will not be a barrier for you with the 22. Okay? If you have the desire, we're going to be there to help you.
It's the first time I'm ever actually able to use a Dewey Decimal joke with a former librarian. But I'm going to pass on that for the moment.
Okay.
From that standpoint. So listen, I appreciate your time. I'm talking with Keith Bennett, who's the reigning Catalina 22 national champion. And you're up here you're a long way from home. I'm assuming, well, first of all, let's talk about the race. I'm assuming you won this weekend.
Yeah, we managed to pull it out. We won by 1 point. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
So obviously it's a competitive race.
It was very competitive.
We've had a conversation with some of the folks here from North Star who are obviously putting together a national championship for next year in 24. So I'm assuming that you're up kind of testing the waters to see what it's like.
Yeah.
This is a very regional boat, certainly. Why the Cal 22 for you?
Well, this guy right here actually got me started in Catalina 22 30 years ago. He taught me everything I know about sailing. Now, he would probably say I still don't know anything, but he got me started, brought me along, brought me up. He used to beat me like a drum, but we've gotten really competitive the last 15, 20 years.
Okay.
So, and it's a good boat. It's a good solid boat. It's very inexpensive. You can get in it pretty reasonable. You get some of these bigger boats, and it costs you a fortune just to maintain it. But the Catalina is really a good boat.
Okay, now you have a 3-man crew, one from Georgia, one from Florida. I'm going to let you introduce yourself.
Yeah.
And you are?
Mickey Richardson.
Missy Richardson, and sir, you are?
Gene Cochran.
Okay, so my first question has nothing to do with sailing. We said it's a little bit off camera. 3 guys coming up that far from obviously different regions of the SEC. Is there football talked a lot on the boat or in the car?
Well, he's a big Georgia fan, and I'm a big Alabama fan. University of Florida. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's discussed.
Yeah.
But it probably left at water's edge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My question in a sport where arrogance is part of the sport, when you have J24s and you have obviously J70s, Malgus 24s, things of that nature, this doesn't come off as a Mercedes by any stretch.
Right.
Yet the guys here looking at some of the boats, there's lots of guys with quantum sails that they bought last year. So there's some rigs here that are absolutely in fine shape to race. I'm assuming your boat would be the same case.
Oh yeah. We use water sails out of South Carolina. Joe Waters, he's been making our sails for years, and he's worked with us real well. Got the sails set up to match the boat, and the boat just sails really well with his sails. Most of the guys that are winning are running his sails.
And he was a Catalina 22 sailor.
Okay. There are some companies, obviously, that make sails for their very specific boats. You know that just in their inventory, and that's certainly true in some of the smaller boats from that standpoint. What makes you such a good sailor? And if you're going to point to your right, I appreciate that. He's obviously the sailor, but what is it? Because your name's on the trophy to that extent. So what is it that makes you a good sailor in terms of maybe a better question is what makes you a better racer?
Well, you have to learn from your mistakes right off the bat, and you have to listen to other people, and you have to ask questions. You know, like if one guy does something and he beats you, it's like, what did you see that I didn't see? You know, and you try to learn from that, because I don't care how good you are, you can learn every day from somebody. The new guy can come up and he may show you something that you didn't know.
Prevailing winds when I lived in San Diego was always was great. Obviously, coming here, it's all kinds of winds, crazy. Explain what kind of sailing. Wow, didn't realize I weighed that much. Explain a little bit about what the sailing is like down. Are you mostly lake sailors down in Alabama?
Yes.
So this is a little different because you can't see the other side. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
What did you learn about the lake, and what did you learn for next year, maybe that you're going to take back and think about?
Well, the chop. You know, we were not accustomed to the chop, and it took us a race or two to figure out the chop. You know, and then the wind would get up, you know, and you had to keep the boat powered up through the chop, and then when it would die off, you had to really power down the boat to pull through it. So, you know, our goal was to come up here and learn this lake for the Nationals, and I think we did that.
It's a good lake to sail. It's a different lake to sail.
Yeah, it's great.
Absolutely.
There's more talent in this area than you would think, and I also know there's a lot of talent where you are. There's a lot of guys that we just had Mitch Bradley up from Old Dominion, who was part of a Nationals laser championship we had here, and he gets a lot of his guys from your part of the world on the 420s and some of the smaller boats. So sailing in the South is obviously huge.
Oh yeah. Our region is very strong. We have a lot of good sailors, and I need to mention he's a two-time national champion also.
Okay.
And he's like a 4 or 5.
Yeah, he's a bridesmaid.
No, he's got several Florida State
He's a
championships.
bridesmaid.
Yeah, I'm a bridesmaid.
We all have our own boats, but we're sailing together in one boat here.
So it's like the 27 Yankees,
Yeah.
a little bit.
It's a recon mission for us.
Last question. Obviously, you're driving home, so this is a trailerable boat, which changes it a little bit from a lot of other boats from that standpoint. How's been the hospitality?
Oh, this is one of the greatest places I've ever been. Everybody's really just been really friendly, very accommodating. Yeah, and we're obviously we're coming for the Nationals next year, but we'll probably be back, you know, just to come back up here.
We'll have
And
very
plus, let me tell you this.
absolutely.
Where I live, it's 102 degrees today.
So you're happy.
This
I'm wearing a vest,
feels
so I
good.
get it.
This feels good to us.
Guys, have a very safe trip back. I
All right,
appreciate
thank
taking the time.
Thank you.
I want to thank all the guys at North Star for spending some time with us and looking forward to next year's national championship. So both Michaels and Jim, thank you very much for your time. Also, some of the pictures we used were from Santa Fabio. I think I'm getting the name right. He's a great photographer, a great boat photographer. We'll leave up her information at the end of the show. So if you get a chance or you're looking for somebody to take pictures at an event, she is a fabulous photographer. If you take a look at her website, I think you'll find it to be pretty cool. And a lot of the stuff she takes. Former Detroit Free Press and News photographer, and has been doing it for a long time, plus also a sailor, so she understands the angles. Up next, we're going to have a chance to spend some time with Tim Profit, and this is an interview you don't want to forget.
I'm talking with Tim Profit, who's had probably one of the best summers I think you've ever had as a sailor. Is that pretty accurate?
It's very accurate.
So let's start with the Port Huron race. You did great there. Obviously, you won the Chicago tonight.
Right. We were first in our class and first overall in the Baby Mac. I've never won an overall on the Cove Island course, so it was a big thrill to do that. The J.L. Hudson Trophy is a pretty cool trophy, and I'm, very glad and very honored and, humbled to be on that trophy with a bunch of with 99 or 98 other really good sailors who have been awarded that trophy. So,
When did you start thinking about Superior?
Actually, that was just under 2 years ago. I was in the Upper Peninsula, and I happened to drive along the north shore of the Upper Peninsula from the Wisconsin side, to the U.S. side. And I'd never really seen Lake Superior before, so I stopped about 20 times at different, scenic overviews and crap like that. And I just kept seeing this vast, gorgeous chunk of water, and I was like, why do I not race up here? I said, oh, well, it's far away. But every other year they have the Trans-Superior race. So I decided then and there I was going to do that race in 2023. And that was like in October of 21. So they'd already run the Trans-Superior race for that year. And, you know, I was aware that it was won overall by a J35.
Keith Stauber.
Papagachos, Keith Stauber, who I did not know at the time, and I know now he's a great guy. I said, well, if a J35 can do that, an NA40 can do that. And so that was the genesis of us doing that race this year.
Okay, so you make a determination 2 years ago to go 2023. All winter on Facebook, we see you working on your boat feverishly, replacing gel coat and all kinds of stuff. Was that obviously to get ready for these 3 races?
Well, some of it was just deferred maintenance. Some of it was new things we discovered that needed repair. And then, but part of it, specifically the battery replacement and then the engine upgrade, which turned out to be an engine rebuild because I screwed up and blew up the engine, which is a whole other story, which I'm not going to get into. But the focus of that was we're going to be up in Lake Superior. There's not very many harbors to tuck into, and if something goes sideways, and I wanted to be much more, mechanically sound and robust. All right. And also because the batteries I had last year they were done. They were 7 years old, and I hate charging batteries during a long distance race. So I did a lot of homework, talked to a lot of people, and ended up replacing my house batteries with lithium-ion. And I'll tell you, we did the Bayview-Mackinac race. We never charged batteries. We did the Chicago-Mackinac race. We never charged batteries. The Trans-Superior race was pretty light aero, so it was a long race. For us, it was 81 and a half hours, okay? That's a long race, all right? That's like 2 Mackinacs, all right? And we ended up, what we learned is I can go 69 hours and 29 minutes before I have to charge batteries. And as part of the battery upgrade, I got some modern battery monitors that give you a ton of information. And it turns out we were able to run the motor for only 30 minutes to get the batteries up to charge and have more than enough to finish the race.
What did you learn about the Trans-Superior, and was there anything you thought going in that maybe sort of your mind was changed?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it never really occurred to me that with the water temperature of the lake being so cold, when the sun goes down, you don't get the night thermals, all right? The breeze just shuts off, and it's just a shit show all night of just finding a little zephyr breeze, getting all excited to be doing 3 knots. You do that for a half hour, and then you're back to doing, 9/10 of a knot until the next little zephyr comes along and you find it. And I understand that's not characteristic. In fact, on the delivery, we had, 20, 25 knots out of the northwest, and that was more, I kind of expected an upwind slog, but it was a good mix. We had some upwind, some downwind, fair amount of reaching. Going into the finish, we had been told, as you get closer to Duluth, stay away from the North Shore. And when we got to within 10 or 12 miles of Duluth, there were 3 boats up there that we just sailed right up to. And one of them had been 15 miles ahead of us, the other 2 had been 12 miles ahead of us, and they were just parked there. They're like, oh my God, it's true. Don't stay away from that North Shore. And so we hung actually left of the rum line in there. And we were in the same neighborhood as Keith Stauber. We saw him hanging left. It's like, all right, he's local. He knows what he's doing. So we hung left. Those boats finally got a little something, and they ended up, they're bigger, faster boats than us, and they ended up finishing ahead of us. And then the Olson 30 Polar Bear, which is a local boat, which was very, very well sailed. We were ahead of them, and then, yellow brick isn't super accurate, but, it gives you, it's an indicator. So we swapped first and second multiple times during that, and we did, in the last 3 miles, we did 6 sail changes. We were sailing fairly reachy on port jibe with a A1 up, and during that whole sequence of changes, we had the asymmetric up, we had the symmetric up, we had a 1 up, we had a 3 up, we had a 1 up, we had asym up, we had the symmetric back up. We approached the finish on starboard very deep and ended up jibing the port to get to the pin end, which was favored. And we also got like 10 minutes of a rainy deluge, you know, like, I don't know, within the last 15 miles. And luckily, the boat's pretty watertight, so we just set everything up and it was dry.
Okay, to be specific, what do you think now of Lake Superior, as it might have been slightly different from what you thought before?
It's very challenging. The sea state is completely different from Huron and Michigan, and I learned really more about that on the delivery back. Okay, but we're out there, might as well learn something, right?
Right.
The NA40 is pretty high freeboard, and on the delivery back, we were sailing pretty deep downwind, and there were times where I could look to my left and look to my right and just see water because we were in a trough of a 12-foot wave.
Right.
You know, it was pretty cool. Scenery spectacular. I'm definitely going to do it again. You know, hopefully in 2 years. It was very challenging. It's a lot longer, obviously. Actually, it's not that much longer. The Chicago Mackinac race.
About 40 miles difference.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, about 40 miles longer. But because it was light, it was like 2 days longer.
You obviously had some expert help on board. John Walton had done the single-handed and actually had won it in 21.
Yep, right. Yep.
So that was a kind of a cool thing. We did have a chance to talk to Bruce Akins, who won it in 19. Obviously, he won the Barthel Trophy overall, but he was the first to cross with his 58.
Yep.
Did you get a chance to get through the Apostle Islands at all coming back?
Yeah, we did. Actually, we cut a couple. We split them on the way in, and at this point, we were ahead of Keith Stauber, and we were like, well, it looks like it makes sense to, you know, cut inside these couple islands. So we're just kind of watching him. Well, he looks like he's committed, so we're going to go. And then we're going like, maybe he's like rope-a-doping us, and he's going to get us to commit and then jive away. We didn't. And it was, they were gorgeous. Yes, on the way back, we did cut through the Apostle Islands. It was just...
And then back, obviously, through Houghton. And did you go to usually they put a big party on in Houghton for the guys racing. Did you get part of that?
No, we got there late at night. I was exhausted. I tweaked my back Saturday morning of the race, and so I did that whole race in a fair amount of pain. And then, I mean, when I got there, I couldn't walk 100 feet without sitting down.
Oh, question: you get all this sailing, you go all over the place. Now it's Duluth. You're done. You got to deliver the boat home.
Yeah.
Which is something in the neighborhood of about 670 miles. Is that about right?
Yeah, I forget 600 and something miles. Yeah.
Is it just the enjoyment of sailing, or at this point, I just want to get home?
Well, I wanted to get home. You know, I have no ass, and so sitting on my keister the whole time driving. Normally I stand when I drive, but my back was sore, so I had to sit. And sitting on the deck, you know, my butt was sore. But I had 3 other people. I had Kent Colpart, Phil Edens, and Aileen Hicks all join me for the delivery home. Thank God. And so we had 2 shifts of 2 people on and off. So it worked out great.
We were mentioning Keith Stauber, just for those who don't know. Keith is the PHRF handicapper.
Yeah, he's the executive director of Midwest Burke.
Bit of a Duluth legend.
Yeah,
he was a Barthel winner, like you said, in 21. So obviously a wonderful guy.
Well, let me tell you about Keith. Okay. So we get there, and we had heard about the hospitality. The only other time I've even been to Duluth was in the 90s, which I remember very little of for reasons I won't get into here. But I did a Richardson Cup regatta up there in Tartan Tents. And I don't remember much about the event, but to this day I had the sense that the hospitality was just off the hook superb. So with that in mind, we do this race. We pull into our well that they assigned us to, and I go bow in, and they said, well, is your shore power cord going to reach the outlet? It's way over here. I go, I don't care. I don't have a shore power cord. Don't carry it. Too much weight. So Keith says, hey, hold on. So he comes back with a 75-foot shore power cord to get plugged in. Oh, cool. Really great. Next day, I'm asking him, where do I go to get fuel around here? So he tells me it's complicated, expensive, and time-consuming, blah, blah, blah. He goes, tell you what, I'll just drive to the gas station. So we drove to the gas station, got some jerry cans, came back, topped off the tank, drove back to the gas station, topped off those jerry cans because there's not very many places in Lake St. Pierre. So anyways, who does that? That is like superb, you know, and everyone was super nice. People walking the docks in Duluth are, you know, just random people, just like very friendly, very nice, you know, curious about the race, curious about, well, you guys came out to Detroit to do this race. It's like, hell yeah.
We wanted to have a chance to conversation with you because we've had terrible pictures. We actually have a good picture of you this time.
Okay.
You see on the phone, we've had to mask it up.
Yeah.
I've been doing this show for 3 years. There were people visibly just happy as you were winning all these races, and we got to transpire all of them are. If there was a better guy to have an opportunity to have this kind of season, it was you. And there's a ton of folks rooting for you. And I just wanted to tell you, I think that's pretty cool.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. We, you know, the boats don't sail themselves. I've got a crew list of about 50 people. 17 different people sail on the boat between the two Mackinaws and the Trans-Superior race. You know, we've got friends that help us do various maintenance and work and delivery on the boat. So, you know, I'm very fortunate. I've got the Fast Tango family is a big freaking family, and they're all super cool people. So, if you've ever been on Fast Tango, I love you. Thank you.
Want to thank Tim for the time spent with us this summer, and this is the first time we actually got to see his face without sort of being distorted from either phones or bad connections. And Tim, you really made a summer great. So thank you for that. Up next, Dwayne and I will talk about the old subject of ratings. Welcome back to Other Voices. We're back for a second week with Dwayne Burgoyne, former Commodore at North Cape Yacht Club and a bit of a legend in the eastern and western parts of Lake Erie. Not a more knowledgeable guy that I know of in terms of Dwayne. And that's been a really terrific friendship, and I appreciate all that he's done. We're gonna discuss something today that's been kind of a water cooler discussion, and that is ORC and PHRF. It's been beat to death by all kinds of people, including a couple of shows here. But I just thought we'd kick it around because I've read some stuff that I thought was interesting, and I think I've got some logic. Now, I'm going to be really clear, Dwayne, that I'm the guy that doesn't completely understand a lot of it, but I think if you disseminate the information, some of it makes sense and some of it doesn't. Now, for the most part, is it fair to say you're a PHRF guy?
Right now, I'm a PHRF perf guy, simply because I understand it much better, and I've been doing it for such a long time.
Okay, so it's convenience. Is that fair?
Absolutely, it's convenience. When you go onto a race course, you know how many seconds a mile you have to beat a guy, or he has to beat you by. So it's a time on distance thing versus a time on time thing.
Okay. With the new races this year with Mac and with most of them, everything's gone to ORC.
It has.
Okay. Is it fair to suggest that PHRF is not as scientific as ORC? Is that fair?
Oh, absolutely not.
Okay. You don't think you think it's equal?
No. I think that we're seeing that ORC is a engineering formula that you can't argue with.
Okay.
But perf is just a long time analysis of racing throughout the country.
Okay. Give me your opinion as to why you think PHRF makes sense.
It's a little bit easier. We've been using it for such a long time. We've got a ton load of data on it. It's used from New England all the way down to San Diego. And when you come into a race and you're coming up against a J35 or whatever it is, you know how many seconds a mile you owe him or he owes you. So it just seems to be, it's commonly called the 900-pound gorilla in the room. So it's the one we've been using, and it's the one that everybody can score with, and it's convenient for everyone.
Okay. You're a retired engineer, so you're obviously a science guy. Why would a scientific formula not be more accurate than an arbitrary sliding scale, which that's my opinion, the PHRF seems to be? Explain that to me.
I'm a pretty old guy. I used to have a sliding rule, slide rule to do math. So when we look at ORC, it's an engineering data thing. You can't disagree with the engineering on it. You know, it takes in consideration the depth of the boat, the weight of the boat, the stability of the boat, of course, the I, the P, and the J on the boat and things like that. The one thing that it can't do right now is it can't figure out the wind and the waves, and those are the variables. Now they've got extra formulas in there to be able to figure that out. So when we do time on time, unfortunately, you can't have a boat rate exactly the same in Chicago as you do in Lake Sinclair. Different waves, different wind conditions, and things like that. So you can't argue the engineering portion of it. Unfortunately, right now, it's not as stable as we would like it to be. It does put a lot of pressure on the race committee, and I'm a race officer, And when you have to make a determination whether it's an upwind race, downwind race, or a multi-race, it puts a little bit of pressure on that too. But it's a good formula. It's working its way in. It's not the old IRC, IMS, or the old formulas, the other three-letter acronym formulas we had. It's a good one, but it's not there yet.
Okay. I'm going to attack this from another end. I'm going to attack this from a new guy looking at the process. Okay. Number one. So if I'm looking at the process, I think of sports. Let me follow this analogy. 90 feet for baseball is the same in Japan as it is all over the world. 100 yards for football, with the exception of Canadian football, they got 55-yard line in the middle. They got 10 more yards, and the end zones are deeper. I'm looking at the U.S. sailing site, and this is the point I wanted to bring up. It says very specifically, historically, this is now PHRF, historically used for USA casual fleet racing. PHRS has grown to be accepted as a division in several major national races as well. So it says in the definition, casual fleet racing, which gives you the impression that it probably is not as specific as it needs to be. ORC is recognized locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally. Obviously, the Ocean Race Congress keeps a median line that makes sense. So with the new races going to ORC, which has been a conversation with a lot of folks that watch the show, why would you hang on to something that is casual versus something specific? As a new guy, how would you explain it to me why I should be a PHRF guy versus an ORC guy?
I think today, PERF is the right way to go. I think in the future, 5 years from now, I think ORC will be the way to go as they get the calculations down. And it's a little bit difficult because you can get an ORC club rating and you can get a different ORC rating where they pick the boat up, they do a lot of measuring on the boat and things like that. Once again, it's an engineering formula. The formula probably works, but not right now. Not right now. The PERF is the better formula right now. And I'm not saying that ORC isn't gonna win out, but I say that it's not in its infancy, but it's getting there, but it's not perfect yet.
Okay, all of these systems are implemented and input by volunteers. That's got to take a part of that discussion too. Is that a fair point?
Absolutely. You look around at the PERF organizations. I'm down in Lake Erie. We have a lot of people working on PERF. We have a lot of measures. At DRYA, we didn't have so many measures, so that's why they went to Midwest PERF. So when you look at PERF versus ORC, it's a little bit more difficult to get a good measurement on a boat. If you want a PERF boat, you take your boat, for example, you bring your O'Day 30 in here to the regatta this weekend, and you need a PERF rating. I can look it up online and have a PERF rating for you in 60 seconds. Supposedly, they tell me that ORC, you can have the same.
My O'Day 30 is rated by the Submarine Federation, so that's a whole nother discussion. I get your point. What I'm suggesting to you is that with PERF and ORC being sort of those, I get that everybody has different reasons. And I know in some cases you have to have boat measured and you have to have all of the things that go with that. But as a new guy looking at racing, if I were looking at this, it can be confusing. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. And one of the cool things that's happening right now is many regattas are run where you get scored as ORC and as PERF. And it's kind of unique to see that at the end of the day, the guy who won usually wins both ends of into the spectrums.
Are they close in your mind?
For most boats, they are, but
Okay.
there are boats that we take, for example, a good friend of mine has a Hobie 33, went over to Chicago Mackinac. The boat that typically owed him 20 to 25 seconds a mile, he now owed a great deal of time, almost a 20-second mile, just the inverse of that. But it is the engineering formula.
What amazes me is the arguments that guys are getting into on the dock when this subject comes up and there's a couple beers and everybody's having a conversation. I've been told more than once that I'm stupid, and that may be pretty accurate. I have no idea, but I'm stupid because I think ORC. But again, I think logically, and as I'm looking at both of these as a somewhat neophyte, I just think that science makes sense to me and it kind of fits. But you've explained something interesting, and it goes back to the volunteers inputting the information, but the other part is that the formula's got to catch up with the process, which is really what you're talking about.
When you look at the process, they're looking at weight of the boat, they're looking at the depth of the boat, the stability of the boat. If you look at you just take a J boat versus a Rob Ball boat, a CNC in the 80s. You know, the bottom of the boat for a Rob Ball boat was very flat. It was designed to you know, go down the waves. And some of the other boats are Beneteau 36-7 has a very narrow front end. So when you take some of the data and you put it in there, it's not as accurate as we would like it to be yet. So once again, I come back to it. It's not the perfect system, but we're working on it and it's getting better. 5 years from now, I think we won't be having this argument.
Okay. I do think there needs to be some discussion about getting it done quicker than later, simply because I think it confuses people. Getting involved in a DYR race, if you're just a casual guy that wants to race in your own regatta, is like, you know, it's like trying to get a marriage license. It's really difficult to go through the process and understand it. And not everybody can read a notice of race and understand it. Maybe they should, but I think that's the other end of the formula, that the guys on the top end are looking at ways to manipulate it. The guys on the bottom end are looking at ways to try to figure it out. And I think that's where sometimes the confusion comes from.
Being involved in this so many years as a race officer and as an organizing authority, we want people to come into our sport. We want it to be very, very simple for them to come into the sport. That's why we put so many of these fleets together, what we call the cruising division. You know, in the cruising division, you don't have to have a perforating. You don't have to have a laminate sail. You can have your Dacron sails. You can take your Catalina 30, your O'Day 30 out there on a Saturday and still compete with other people. The reality of it is that sometimes you're going to get hooked, and next thing you know, you've got a J105 out there in a year. And sometimes it was just a lot of fun, and we drank some beer around the course.
Is it fair to suggest that you can manipulate PHRF easier than you can ORC?
Excuse my language, but hell yes.
Okay.
If you look at PHRF, it's a bunch of guys representing organizations or clubs, and they're sitting around and they're making a determination on what your rating is going to be. And I can't help to say, and I have friends in this, and I can't help but say that sometimes it becomes an opinion, and sometimes that opinion has some background to it.
Okay. I again ask the same point, or make the same point, that if it's easier to manipulate, the guys that I listen to that are for it, generally speaking, are the guys that are looking for an edge. And I don't have any problem. You know, the old joke is, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. I completely understand that premise. But part of that regulation becomes, if you really want to be Corinthian, then to that extent, you have to be a little more accurate, more importantly, a little less opportunistic to cheat Mother Nature, so to speak.
Yeah, just ask 10 guys on the dock on a Saturday afternoon which one they like, ORC or perf, and then find out if they're faster or slower than their buddies. There's an engineering formula that you come out 10 out of 10 most of the time.
No, but I did this at a ski race once. We took Prel. We put Prel on the bottom of the skis. And it was absolutely for effect. It had nothing to do with the skis, and it had nothing to do with the wax. So I had really fast racers. We put the Prel on the first part of the Saturday morning, and they went down the hill, and they were all in the top 10. In the afternoon race and the next two races the next day, on Sunday, everybody was putting Prel on. Everybody went to the little convenience store and bought Prel. Finally, two of the coaches came up and says, "What is it that you found out with Prel that was so important?" I said, "Absolutely nothing. I just want to see how many of you idiots would follow suit and copy us." So I think there's some part of truth to that in sports that goes with that same thing. And maybe that's the long discussion. So
yeah, it's kind of a fun story. Is that 1987, I think it was 87, the Kiwis put a shark skin coating on the side of their boat, and they thought it was going to be faster, and everybody else was trying to do the same thing. I don't think it made it any faster, but it was psych. I mean, I come from my background is auto racing, and in auto racing, you're always trying to read the rules, and we don't call it cheat the rules, but you're trying to read the rules and see the finite details that they forgot. In sailboat racing, it's exactly the same.
wouldn't then, if that's true, wouldn't SailGP really have it on the nose because every boat's owned by one guy. They're all the same and they're rented out, and they don't get those boats until they have an opportunity. So when they hit the starting line, it becomes the best sailor or the best crew, not anything to do with, well, he certainly has to do with the equipment, but everybody's doing the same thing because they don't have access to tweak it and screw around with it. And that would, to me, to be, maybe that's one of that's really a Corinthian race to some extent. Would you think?
Absolutely. That's why so many people like one design. I mean, whether you've got an Interlake or Lightning or a Thistle, they're all the same. And that's where in your classes they only let you use certain type of sail material and things like that. So they don't want the rich guy to win. Although, all of our viewers already know that even in one design, the guys may be tweaked a little bit different on the way their boats are. But that is the idea of one design.
Well, the next time I get into a discussion about a bar, I'm going to go back to the USA Sailing website and point out that they actually use the word casual in the definition of PHRF. And you really have no leg to stand on because casual isn't serious if it relates to a scientific formula. And there's a very distinct canyon between those two thoughts. So
Casual racing ends as soon as the class flag goes up at 5 minutes of the race. It's not casual anymore. Guys like you and I that have been out there for a long time, we go out there on a Wednesday night and want to go sailing with our friends and everything. That only works up till 5 minutes before the start of the race.
Well, and I'll leave you with this because I want to make sure we keep our segments to a good time frame. But I will tell you this: I walked to a race last week and watched a race committee scream at each other out in public, and then about 300 yards off the start line, you could hear them 300 yards away on the dock, and I heard colorful adjectives that I usually hear on football fields. But it would be interesting to see if the guys that were yelling at each other ended up having a beer together, because I'm not too sure 30 seconds before the race was going to start. I heard some really wonderful, colorful adjectives. So it's a lot more than casual racing, I guess is my point.
Well, I agree with you. And hopefully when I run races, I don't yell at people like that, but it can get intense out there, of course. But,
right.
It's quite interesting. It's like, this discussion we're having here is the same discussion that everybody had in last Saturday, and I'm kind of anxious to find out what's going to happen in the next 5 years. I think you might see we will go over towards a more of a engineering type formula.
Yeah. Well, listen, thanks, and we'll figure out another subject next week. And Dwayne, thanks for your time as always.
Thanks as always. Nice to visit with you.